What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Week 10 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin Wilson. Lot to get to today, and when we finish up, one of our biggest fans, Connor, has submitted another song. So a tribute this week to BYU will play us out, but a lot to get to before we get to that. Collin, how goes it?
Good to see your face today. It's been a fun week. Got off a little slow in the handicapping. I know I got some sort of comment on Twitter about hopping on a Minnesota late. I tell you what, when you have to balance handicapping, like fitting it into your pockets. And if you're not getting Sunday and Monday activity, by the time the services come in and whack numbers, you got to wait till the end of the week. So a lot of lines to get to, a lot of movement. And one thing I'll mention here off the top, Dodgers win the World Series stuck. So it kind of falls in line with your handicap of 2024, which is year of the chalk.
You're the chalk.
Are we gonna get Georgia? Who you calling for a national champion? Who's the biggest chalk here? Georgia?
Yeah, it would probably be Georgia, but I think 2025 might be the year of the dog. But yeah, year of the chalk, man. I mean, Mahomes winning was the biggest surprise. Mahomes winning a Super Bowl. Like, you had UConn, even the women's, both at WNBA and college.
Yep. And Boston Celtics, Matt Moore out there talking for
Celtics
to get
the
the
Panthers. UConn wins it again in college basketball. I mean, insane. We get a Dodgers Yankees World Series.
Tennessee,
the Dodgers,
Texas
the favorite, win it.
Tennessee, Texas A&M College World Series, both were humongous favorites.
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting year. But let's dive right into the slate. People are dumping on this slate. Here to tell you, it's going to be a good one. I could feel it in my bones. There's going to be some chaos. It's what last week there wasn't. Last week was the dud week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of probably due for that after so much chaos. I think every higher ranked team won. Like the biggest upset of a ranked team was undefeated BYU winning against UCF. But there's no real separation at the top. There's no elite teams. There's going to be chaotic weekends. I think this is going to be another one. But the marquee game of the weekend is Ohio State, Penn State, which, I don't know, Penn State fans may be upset that this game is not at night. Maybe that favors Ohio State a bit. This will kick off as the big noon, or I should say the big 12:15 Eastern game on Fox. Ohio State 3.5-point favorite here. Totals tick down to 45.5. A lot of uncertainty in this game. Is Drew Aller going to go? I don't know. I would lean towards yes, but we won't know until game time. Not going to find out from Franklin, who's, look, small game James. He normally doesn't win these games. He's been very bad in these marquee games. But Ryan Day, and James Franklin's 1-9 against Ohio State. But Ryan Day in these top 5 matchups has also not been good. Something has to give here. Just on the surface, what I find interesting is that this number is similar to like what Ohio State was laying on the road to Oregon. But we've seen Ohio State. We didn't know a lot about them. They lost that game to Oregon. I thought that line was too high, and they arguably should have lost to Nebraska. There's more uncertainty than just the quarterback situation with Penn State. Penn State's right tackle, questionable. Sutton, one of their better edge rushers, questionable. On the Ohio State side, it's their offensive line. They've suffered another injury at left tackle. They lost their starting left tackle for the season. After their backup went down, they had to kick their left guard out. There was already questions on the right side. That is my biggest concern for Ohio State here is, does their offensive line hold up, or does it completely just deaden this offense? They couldn't get the run game going because of the offensive line issues against Nebraska last week. I assume that would be difficult again against Penn State. What do you see here in this Big Ten matchup that I think that this game means more to Ohio State? Ohio State loses this game.
Mm-hmm.
there's a risk that they don't make the college football playoff because they
What?
won't make the Big Ten championship. Uh, they
What?
won't make the Big Ten championship. It's interesting. Would a 10-2 Ohio State get in? Um, they won't have any marquee wins, but Indiana, assuming Indiana keeps winning, would end up being one. And then you would take a 10-2 Ohio State over an 11-1 Indiana because they won head to head. They had the strength of schedule advantage. That's an interesting discussion. But
Mhm.
things are going to get really interesting if Ohio State loses this game. In these matchups all year, we've just seen the home team with the points, that just take the points. That's the way that I would lean, but there's a ton of uncertainty in this game. What are you seeing?
I think you hit one of the two biggest handicaps in this game, and that is the Ohio State offensive line. Left guard Donovan Jackson is going to get kicked out, slide out to left tackle after Josh Simmons lost for the year. You mentioned that Zen Mikowski was the backup. Absolutely, even if he was healthy, absolutely horrific performance last week. 20 drop back, 20 pass blocking assignments, gave up 2 sacks, 4 pressures. I actually have 2 data sources to show me pressures, and one of them was much worse than that.
Hey, he was bad, but he was bad, and if he played, it would be bad. But now without him, you're like impacting multiple positions.
Yep.
With the right side already in question.
And we do this all the time with offensive lines. When you have guards playing tackles, when you have third string centers, when you have this is a true trickle down effect to the rest of the offense, especially zone read, which is what the Buckeyes like to run a lot with Will Howard. And I will say that Donovan Jackson moving out from left guard to left tackle, he has 4 snaps of experience in his college career. 2,045 snaps. He's had 4 at left tackle. So, and we've already had problems with the Buckeyes offensive line. I mean, they are outside the top 50 in line yards and pass blocking. Nebraska pushed them around. Everybody's pushing them around. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we know that Penn State is the same type of defensive line they've had the past few years. I don't think they have. I think that they've got, especially Abdul Carter, there's a couple guys in new positions. I do think they have better linebacker play than Ohio State. But on this side of the ball, the offensive line is a true problem. And Quinshon Judkins trying to get that running game going with Will Howard, it's going to be a problem with this offensive line. So I think that's one big part of the handicap. The other one stuck is this is the Andy Kotelnicki money game right here. This is why you went out and got him. This is why you went out and spent a whole bunch of money. And I think last week, I'm not sure if Bo Prabula was planned on coming into this game against Ohio State, and he just had to come in last week. But what a test run from an RPO perspective. Andy Kotelnicki has had.
He might be a better fit for the Kotelnicki offense.
Jalen Daniels. He's Jalen Daniels.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but so from a talent perspective. But yeah, there's the 2 things that I wonder about. Like, he might be a better fit, but he's obviously not as talented throwing as Howard. Right. But is he going to play? And also, Ohio State will be at least prepared for him, which Wisconsin wasn't. We've seen that element of surprise. We'll talk about Texas A&M in a bit. So you don't have that working in your favor, which just adds the uncertainty of this game. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think the first thing I started with Kotelnicki was, has he faced Jim Knowles head to head? To me, that was really important because Jim Knowles does like to go cover 0. He will blitz the hell out of you. They have played each other. I'm sorry, the coordinators have gone against each other. The Kotelnicki offense at Kansas in 2021 was beaten 55-3 by Oklahoma State. In fairness, that was that 2-10 Kansas team that Leipold had just taken over. I don't think that's really a good litmus test about where Kotelnicki's offense is against Jim Knowles. But at the same time, it does give Kotelnicki a little bit of experience against Knowles 4-2-5. What are you going to do with pre-snap motion? Now that you have Prabula in there, what can you do from pre-snap, gun, shotgun, pistol? We saw a lot of pistol. Once I did my research on the Penn State offense, it's not really the zone read that's going to attack this Ohio State defensive front. It's power football. So I think Singleton and Allen you're just going to see them set up in a pistol formation, 1-back set. And I think you're going to see Prabula potentially be an RPO decoy. But this allows Andy Kotelnicki to unlock 100% of his playbook, something he could not do with Drew Aller. Now, Drew Aller may play. We'll see how the knee is going. But this feels like Texas A&M. I now have 2 options. I have one that can get into your secondary, and I have one that can run the RPO. It just makes life tougher for the Ohio State defense. You combine that with the offensive line issues of Ohio State. I took Penn State at 4. I would take Penn State at +3. I would take them all the way down to 2 in this game. And for somebody that laid Ohio State not to make the playoff +450 and thought I was going to get laughed out of the building this summer, This is a big one. This is a real big one. Ohio State's playoff chances are on the line here.
Yeah, I think the Penn State receivers, their lack of explosiveness worries me a bit because I do think Ohio State does have at least a couple guys that they can throw at Warren. I
Mm.
don't know what the court, like if Aller goes and he's not healthy, that scares me.
Yep.
And so um for now I'm staying away. I would lean under as well, but there's going to be a lot of aggressive coverage in this game, so you could have some more explosiveness, although like the Ohio State offensive line, that probably limits that. And the Penn State receivers, yeah, I think Ohio State can match up with. So and I
It's
think
about the
both
play action.
coaches might be conservative. Yeah, it's all about the play action and the
Yep.
misdirection, getting those Ohio State vulnerable linebackers. And does the Ohio State defensive line, like sometimes they look great, sometimes they don't show up. That's a big factor as well. I certainly would lean Penn State, lean the under. Um, should be a good one to kick off Saturday's slate. Moving on, Oregon at Michigan. Michigan stinks, people, but guess what? I played Michigan.
Oh, we're in
I bet
agreement. It's
Michigan.
going on the board. Put this on. They'll get the board out. Let's go.
It's on the board. All right. Updated.
I can't believe we're backing Michigan and on the board.
It's on the board. Agree tab 14-9 so far this year. Easily could be 17-6. Lost 3 games by the hook because of 2-point conversions. If I don't get a 2-point, I'm like 0 of 17 on 2-point conversions to cover either way this year. I don't know if I want to root for 2-point conversions for progression or just want to avoid them. I even have the Giants, the worst 2-point conversion I've ever seen. It's like a high school team on Monday night. I don't know what that play was, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, I like Michigan here. Anything over 2 touchdowns. First, for starters, well, Michigan's looking to beat a #1 ranked team for the first time since they beat Miami in 1984. Lost 8 straight since. So, from a pure market perspective, first, Michigan closed 6-point favorite at Illinois. It's assuming they're over a touchdown better. And they lost that game, but they were pretty unlucky, all things considered. Oregon was a 21-point favorite at home against Illinois. So, take around 3.5 points for home field in Oregon and Michigan, 7-point difference. We're basically saying that Michigan and Illinois are equals. The market just told us that Michigan's about a touchdown better. I have Michigan, I think, about 4.5 points better than Illinois, who I think is terrible.
Right.
The other thing is low total here, catching over 2 touchdowns at home. This is a better matchup for Michigan than Illinois.
Yep.
One of the reasons I bet Oregon last week against Illinois is Illinois can't run the ball. Michigan can. Oregon's biggest weakness by far is their run defense. They're outside the top 100 in a couple advanced metrics. Part of that is Genty, but we saw Purdue move the ball on the ground at will at times against Oregon. They just couldn't finish drives, and they have a terrible defense. Michigan actually has a good defense. Maybe Will Johnson decides to play as well. The Illinois defensive line, also terrible. Michigan has a really good defensive line that I think can play up here. Oregon's offense still really lacks explosiveness. The other thing, Oregon doesn't care about these games in the second half. So even if they blow this open and they're up 21, but I think Michigan can hold them to 28 or fewer. And I think that they can have success on the ground, shorten this game. But Oregon just gets a lead and then just sits on it, but brings in their backups that stay healthy. They have no incentive to get margin. They're already in the College World Playoff. I think this is a bit too many points given the matchup and the situation. So I took the Wolverines catching over 2 touchdowns at home. You agree?
I completely agree. I agree with you on the Michigan side on offense about what they're going to do here. You know that they're going to go.
Yeah, they don't have the Oregon secondary has been really good.
Right.
Michigan doesn't have receivers. Like that advantage is who cares?
Right.
And I actually finally like the play calling is more innovative from Michigan last week. Their offense kind of had some added wrinkles, and I liked some of the things that I saw. Like I think they can get to 14 points here.
Yeah. Look, Oregon's defense is tremendous at stopping the pass, top 10 in every metric, a havoc rank of 7th because of a pass rush that can get all up in your business. And they can swat things down. Quarterback Jabbar Muhammad leads a secondary that is just, they swat everything out there. 14th, I believe, and contested catch rate. So what you're going to look at is this Michigan offense that has been redefined now with Tuttle retiring, Orgy's back to inside zone with Khalil Mullings, and you're going to look at Davis Warren and his 4.4 average depth of target, targeted Colston Loveland 8 times last week. So that's the offense. That's the entire offense. And Oregon's going to have to try to stop these run concepts of outside zone. Michigan has been explosive with inside zone, and that is a way that Oregon can be gash. I think the other side of the ball stuck is what made my decision on that I want to back Michigan. Dylan Gabriel right now is riding this just wave of Heisman money. His numbers look so good in the last 2 weeks against Purdue and Illinois. I throw him out. Dylan Gabriel has seen 65 pressures this season. Only 8 of them have come in the last 2 weeks. That offensive line has kept Dylan Gabriel clean. He could eat off the turf and no one could touch him.
Plus, you could run all day on Purdue and Illinois.
Yeah.
And that just sets everything else up and opens everything else up. And neither of those teams get pressure, as you said.
And I've said this about Gabriel, like when all the Heisman bets were flying in the summer, I say it's a real problem with pressure. That's still going on this year. 2 big time throws, 2 turnover worthy plays. Michigan is ranked as the top pass rush unit in all of PFF. It is a leaky defense, though. You mentioned Will Johnson, like the Wolverines defense on the back end, they're 80th in coverage grading. So, if Wink Martindale is going to send blitz 40% of the time, you're going to see some Oregon explosives through the pass game. But if hands are in the face of Dylan Gabriel, there's going to be some problems here. It could even turn into a turnover. The biggest problem is Michigan's defense is 125th and allowing explosives during passing down. So Gabriel, if he can get his ADOT pushed up a little bit and create explosive plays, which Oregon really has not done this year through the pass, 125th in pass EPA, then, you're going to see Oregon potentially cover, but I don't think they will. Because if you look at Michigan's defensive line, Derek Moore, Mason Graham, and Josiah Stewart, each one of them have 24 pressures this season. I love the zone read. I love the power concepts on the Michigan offensive side of the ball. I think Colston Loveland becomes a big factor, whether he's catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage. This is going to be enough to keep this number close with Oregon, especially because they cannot defend the run like they do the pass.
Yeah, and that'll enable Michigan to hold the ball, possess it, shrink the game, and I think stay within 2 touchdowns. Let's move on to Texas A&M at South Carolina. Texas A&M, the only remaining undefeated team in the SEC, will travel to South Carolina. I played South Carolina plus 3.5.
Yep.
I need 3 to play it now. For what it's worth, South Carolina 12-5-1 against the spread at home against top 10 opponents since 2005, covering by about a touchdown per game. That includes 7 outright victories as either an underdog or small favorite. Elko hasn't named who's going to start. I would assume it's Marcel Reed, but he's, I think, smartly leaving that.
Yep.
Not naming the starter, and then South Carolina has to prepare for both. But situationally, Texas A&M off the huge win against LSU, in which they caught the Tigers by surprise, weren't prepared for Marcel Reed. South Carolina off of a bye. I think that's important because that means Lenore Sellers will be healthy. They were dealing with some bumps and bruises, and Sellers just didn't have the same running ability pre-bye. I think he'll be healthier and provide a bit more juice there. I am a bit worried about South Carolina gives up a ton of tackles for loss. Texas A&M eats in that department. It's not going to be easy for the South Carolina offense, but Texas A&M has been giving up a lot of explosives on the ground through the air. I think South Carolina can hit enough. I think their defensive line, assuming it's going to be Reed, if it's Wegman, you can't throw on South Carolina. Their pressure is too good. Their secondary is too good. So I don't trust Wegman to throw on them. If it's Reed, I do worry a bit about just Moss and the power run game for Texas A&M. It's a very aggressive South Carolina defense, and you can run on them a bit. But South Carolina is good against running quarterbacks.
Very much.
And then you can load the box here and make Reed beat you. And I don't think he can through the air. He just doesn't read defense as well. Not a polished passer right now. I mean, he can throw a deep ball, but and here's the thing. If you look at Texas A&M, I mean, and by the way, South Carolina, these two teams, if like you change a couple plays with South Carolina, or a couple penalties, change a couple penalties. South Carolina should have beat LSU at home. Blew that 17-point lead. They got bogus call after bogus call. They could have beat Alabama. They arguably should have. They had missed field goals, all kinds of turnovers. So they easily could be 4-1 in league play. Like in this game would be huge, and they'd be in contention in the SEC. They'd have a pair of wins over Alabama and LSU. Instead, they lost by 2 and 3. And then Texas A&M, they're ranked inside the top 10. And if you look at it, they've benefited from the element of surprise at quarterback, which they won't have here. When they played Florida didn't really know much about Reed. Reed looked good. When he came in against LSU was prepared. But how about against Arkansas? Arkansas, ready for it. How about against Bowling Green?
Mm-hmm.
Ready for it. And arguably, those two teams, those are 2 one-possession wins. They could have won those games. So, I don't have a ton. I have Texas A&M power rated above South Carolina, but it's not a huge margin. So I can't get to a field goal or more here, especially when you consider the spot. South Carolina's just been unlucky, and they'll be healthier here after the bye, extra time to prepare. And if you just look from a pure net yards per play perspective, remove garbage time and only against FBS opponents, Texas A&M is 53rd, plus 0.3 net yards per play. South Carolina is 58, plus 0.24. And by the way, South Carolina's played the tougher schedule, played a top 3, one of the 3 hardest schedules in the country to date. And the other point I want to bring up here, Texas A&M has not played a dominant defense since Notre Dame. And in that game, they only had 250 yards at home. You know who has? South Carolina. They played 3 in their past 3 games. When I consider a dominant defense, it's a defense I've rated in the top 20. Well, South Carolina, over their past 3 games, has played Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Texas A&M, since that Notre Dame game, what's the best defense that they played? LSU, not a dominant defense. Mississippi State, Missouri, Arkansas,
not
Bowling
Alabama.
Green. Texas A&M hasn't played Alabama. But I have Alabama I have Alabama rated in the top 20. They're not an elite defense by any stretch. Florida, no. So this is South Carolina. I do have as a top 20 defense. So it's a big step up here. I like South Carolina at home at night. Great spot.
Yeah, right before you and I hit the recording button, the 2.5s evaporated. 3s are back on the board, and now I'm interested because I missed that 4 on Sunday. I wanted South Carolina at 4. Looks like that we might get a little bit of a buyback here, a break on Thursday, but shop definitely for the best number.
No, there's the 3s are back. Do you agree on 3?
I agree on 3. Yeah, let's put it on the board. I'll take 3. I didn't want that 2.5, but because the South Carolina, the offense is pretty one-dimensional. It is try to run the RPO with Lenora Sellers. If not, I'm going to try and create explosive passes. That, to me, is the avenue to South Carolina points here, is when Lenora Sellers and that Rocket Sanders RPO offense finally gets wrangled in by the Texas A&M defensive line. There's going to be some sort of play action or some sort of guy standing 50 yards down the field for Sellers to throw it down to. 20th in EPA passing. That's going to show up here. His passing attempts to Mazeo Bennett coming out of the slot on during play action have been the bulk of the South Carolina points. I think the other side of the ball is really where you start your handicap. South Carolina's defense. Look at these mobile quarterbacks they've gone up against. South Carolina essentially ended Michael Hawkins Jr. season for OU. I don't think he's playing quarterback for the rest of the season. Jalen Milroe had 18 recorded rushing attempts and 36 yards. South Carolina recorded 9 tackles for loss on that Alabama offense. And then finally, Jackson Dart, his outside zone that he's been so successful with, he only had 8 carries for 44 yards. So South Carolina is doing a number, and you have to ask, is it going to be Connor Weigman? Can he survive a pressured pocket? South Carolina is the second best pass rush in the nation. They're the second best coverage unit in the nation. I'm not sure Connor Weigman is the fit here. What about Marcel Reed? I just said, what do they do against RPO or quarterbacks? More importantly, look what you said, Stuck, about Reed's history when defenses have a chance to plan. I think everybody that was holding an LSU ticket last week didn't have a chance to plan when Marcel Reed was going to come in and save the game. So turnovers, Sellers explosives, that's the key to this game for South Carolina. I think it's also a key to an over, but I think the scripted portion of this game, Stuck, whether it's Weigman or Marcel Reed, and whatever is going to happen with Norris Sellers and Rocket Sanders, I don't think any team's going to have success for quite a while here until we make adjustments. So I like under 21.5 in the first half. I am with you on the 3. There's a couple of 3.5s out there, so I will wait to put it in the app until we get 3.5 more widely available out there. I see 2 national books that have it, so I'll wait around a little bit to get the Gamecock number in.
Yeah, I don't mind anything under here too. I think it'll be low scoring game. Should be a good one. Hopefully, I'm hoping that Texas A&M for my college football playoff futures wins by 1. Like let's call it 21-20. All right, let's move on to the rundown. Let's hit about 8 or 9 games here. All right, let's start Minnesota at Illinois. I love Minnesota here. Look, this Illinois team, I've been screaming it from everywhere, is a complete fraud. I mean, let's just look at they're 3-0 in 1 possession games. They should have lost by 40 to Penn State. They have 2 overtime wins. On the season, they're 85th in non-garbage time net yards per play margin. Negative 0.5 net yards per play. Minnesota, 32nd. And both teams have had a similar strength of schedule. Illinois, the second luckiest team when you look at second order wins on the season. This is like a 3 to 4 win team so far this season. They've just been extremely lucky, especially when it comes to turnovers. And they're trending down. Luke Altmaier, we've been saying it. Like, this guy is not all of a sudden just doesn't commit turnovers. His turnover worthy play rate was right around the same, and he just was getting lucky. And we saw that last week. Even after last week's 2 interception performance, he has 15 touchdowns to 3 interceptions on the season. But he has 10 big-time throws, 11 turnover-worthy plays. Last year, he had 10 interceptions on 9 turnover-worthy plays. There's more coming. He also just got beat up last week. The entire Illinois team got beat up last week.
Yep.
Injuries in the secondary. They were playing a wide receiver in the secondary at one point.
Pat Bryant. Pat
Bryant is huge. Yeah. Concussion. I don't know if he's going to go. But he had the highest passer rating of any receiver in the country when targeted going into last week. That's been the entire Illinois team. Throw to Bryant, throw to Franklin. They can't run the ball. They lost their leading rusher. Their offensive line is bad. Their D-line is bad. They get no pressure. They can't stop the run. Their defense has just benefited from turnovers. There's just not a lot to like about this team. And now they're beat up. Like, coming home, where Bielema, by the way, is 8-15-1 against the spread, 34.8% during his time at Illinois, including 5-11, 31.3% in conference play. All these things for Illinois, and like now their outside hope of winning the Big Ten title is gone after that loss to Oregon. And Minnesota is trending in the complete opposite direction. This team is going way under the radar. They easily could be 7-1 if they make that field goal against UNC and the refs don't job them against Michigan. Could be 7-1 on the year. They've had one really bad half against Iowa. And they're a bit more vulnerable. On defense, they're playing really well. And what you need to do, Corey Hedman's done a great job. He simplified things. The coverage bust, the misassignments are gone. You have to stop Franklin and Bryant might not play. You have to just stop Illinois' passing attacks. They can't run the ball. And Minnesota's run defense has been a bit more vulnerable than the capacity. Justin Wally, Ethan Robinson at quarterback, the freshman kid Parrish, they're at safety. Their secondary has been elite, and they've shut down, really competent passing attacks. USC, Maryland, their D is playing well, and their offense is also trending in the right direction. They're healthier now. They were dealing with some injuries early in the season. Brosmer has a handle on the offense. He's developed a really good connection with Daniel Jackson. They should be able to run the ball here, attack with their short passes. I think this is a really good matchup on both sides of the ball. Brosmer's only one of 3 quarterbacks, minimum 200 dropbacks on the season, with an adjusted completion percentage of at least 80%. The other 2, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel. He's not putting the ball in harm's way. And and the defense has been elite outside of one half against Iowa. They're one of only 13 teams allowing fewer than 17 points per game. I like the Gophers to get it done on the road. You agree?
100% agree. I heard on Pat Bryant a couple hours ago, this is a Thursday. It's not looking good for his concussion protocol. That's going to get
He got destroyed.
Yeah. And that's going to cause double teams on Zachary Franklin. Minnesota has a really high havoc ranking, but it's not because of the pass rush. It's because of the secondary. Minnesota ranks in the top 10 in contested catches in all of college football. So anything Altmaier is going to put up is going to get swatted or taken back. And if Illinois even does work themselves into scoring position, there's just monster advantages here for the Minnesota defense and finishing drives and red zone numbers. I think the other side of the ball, you mentioned Brosmer, 6 passing touchdowns the last 2 games, no turnover worthy plays, and 3 straight games. He is hot. And when I say hot, his average depth of target in a win against Maryland last week, 10.1. Didn't think that was possible from Brosmer, who we knew was going to be a dink and dunk passer. Looks like he's now getting a little bit more extension in his throws. More importantly, Brosmer is the 15th best rated quarterback in on target rate this year per Sports Info Solutions. There's a trio of defensive backs for Illinois here that might not play this game, from Terrence Brooks, Torrey Cox, Caleb Patterson. So Brosmer is increasing his ADOT, increasing his efficiency, and Illinois might be without their best pieces in the secondary. And finally, even if Brosmer doesn't seem to get it going here in this spot against Illinois, Darius Taylor has really cranked it up. He's averaging 4.5 yards after first contact. He's created 17 missed tackles in the last 3 games. That rushing attack from Minnesota is still there. We're just putting a spotlight on something that they haven't had before, which is Brosmer having an average depth of target of over 10 yards. That's a new element for us to handicap.
Agreed. Go Gophers. Row the boat. Duke at Miami. Miami laying 20.5 here. Total 54.5. Yeah, noon start at Miami, like maybe a sleepy spot. For the Canes. I don't know. Maybe they just come out a bit flat. Surprising metric wise, if you look at Miami, the secondary was the big question coming into the year. But the way to attack them so far this year has been able to run the ball. Duke can't run the ball, and Malik Murphy doesn't run it. Like mobile quarterbacks have given Miami some issues. This game, to me, comes down to, I'm sure you'll talk about it, Duke can create some havoc. Manny Diaz in his return to Miami. Is that basically just what this comes down to? How much havoc can Duke create and potentially force Ward into some mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Duke, the defense is what drives us. I want to play Duke. I just can't get to the 21. I want the 21. So I've been patient all week and betting the Blue Devils, but I will be on them. And if I can't get the 21, I'll probably come in first half, because you mentioned Manny Diaz returning to Miami. I think his scripted portion of this game, offensively and defensively, will probably have a little bit more focus and a little bit more of his attention, considering who he is going up against. Really, the playbook with Miami, we've said it all year, is the havoc portion. Can the Blue Devils implement some havoc? And then again, on their offense, keep havoc allowed going, which they are one of the best. They're solid offensive line in terms of pass blocking. It's really helped Malik Murphy out, but that's not the focus of the handicap. The handicap is, what can we do to Cam Ward? Duke is 4th in limiting pass explosives. They're very highly ranked in pass EPA, and the havoc numbers are not really so much from a pass rush. It's really more in the secondary. So while I don't think Cam Ward is going to get shoved out of this pocket, I think he is going to make mistakes and coverage looks downfield, where Duke has been really pretty good this year. They are 5th nationally in contested catch rate. That means every ball that gets in the air is going to get some hands on it by the Blue Devils. So Cam Ward could have a high interception count and a lower pressure count in this game. And then finally, the Blue Devils are 10th in defensive finishing drive. So even if Miami gets into scoring position, it's going to be tough to get some points up on the board, especially against this Duke defense that is 15th and methodical is allowed. Teams are just not racking up quality drives against Duke. So I'm looking for 21 or better. If I don't get it, I'm going to play the Diaz angle in the first half on the Duke spread.
Vanderbilt, Auburn. I am the Pavia Whisperer. Gotten every Vandy game right this year. We're fading him this week. Ponzi scheme is back. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's going to fall apart. I like Auburn. There's 7s out there, so I need 7. I make this closer to 10. Mentioned net yards per play. We have a pretty good sample size now. Auburn's had the tougher schedule. Auburn top 30 nationally net yards per play, over a yard per play. Vanderbilt's 82nd, just ahead of Rice. look, Vanderbilt, I've loved them all year as an underdog, but it's different when you're catching big numbers, double digits. I don't think they stay within a touchdown here. Pavi is also banged up, shoulder injury, knee injury, kind of limited his mobility late. You could see that. There's also some regression coming for this Vanderbilt team without Pavi's mobility. Like I don't think that they can stay in the top 10 on third downs. Like I think that there's some regression coming there. They've also recovered 75% of their fumbles. They have a +5 turnover margin. Auburn's at -9. Auburn is how many Peyton Thorne key turnovers are they away from being 7-1?
Right.
I mean, honestly, like they should have beat Oklahoma without the pick 6. They outplayed Arkansas. They blew that 2-touchdown lead against Missouri. I mean, how close are they to 6-2 or 7-1? But so close, and this number would be, I think, double digits. I know Vanderbilt is a wagon against the spread as a dog, but it's different when it's 7 or less. And I know Jerry Kill has owned Hugh Freeze, but they will be ready for this game. Revenge spot for getting embarrassed on their home field last week. They also got to see this offense, this unique offense with Kill's offense, with Pavia, with Stowers. So I think they'll be ready. The Vanderbilt defense is extremely vulnerable outside of their safeties and slot. Their offensive line can still be pushed around. I think this is a top 25 Auburn defense. I think the Tigers get them here. Huge game for their bowl eligibility chances, also for Vandy too. But I think this number is too short.
Yeah, I completely agree with you if we want to put it on the board, because the question at the beginning of the week, I believe I asked on our Sunday recap pod, are we automatically buying Vandy with the Jerry Kill Tim Beck special against Hugh Freeze that keeps happening every year? Now Diego Pavia's health is a factor. You could point directly to him playing a schedule of defenses that are in the SEC and not Conference USA. So, of course, Pavia is feeling it right now. But when you go into the numbers, Auburn is 22nd in defensive stuff rate. They're 11th in line yards. That ball control possession offense that Vanderbilt likes to implement to get first downs and chew clock is just not going to work here with the defensive numbers that Auburn has. And, they're 23rd in strength of schedule. So it's not like Auburn has not played some of the best teams in the nation. They have advantages in controlling Vanderbilt and the clock. And I'm not sure who on this Vanderbilt defense is stopping Jarquez Hunter from running.
Woo! What did he run for 300 last week?
Yeah. Who is stopping them? I don't know. Put me on the board. I have not touched Auburn since that goddamn pick 6 with Oklahoma. I hope I'm not icing it here for us, but yeah, War Eagle.
It'll definitely be a sweat. I had him against Missouri, and somehow that was a sweat when it looked like the game was in hand. Florida, Georgia.
Yeah.
World's largest outdoor cocktail party. All right, I'm on the fence with Florida. I think I want to play them. I saw that you played them.
Yep.
So I need to be convinced here. Wilson's not going to play, which does worry me a bit. But which Georgia shows up, they've been so inconsistent this year.
Right.
I think can Lagway hit his explosives? Like if you look, 9 big time throws, 0 turnover worthy plays on 20+ yard throws. He's 12 of 19 on those passes with a 33-yard ADOT, completing 63% of his deep passes. However, in the intermediate range, he's only completing 40% of those passes. Does Georgia just try to take away the explosives? I would assume, and then make him beat you in the intermediary range. But there's other positive news for Florida, though. Their offensive line is trending up. San Diego State transfers playing better. And they played some good defensive lines. The defense is playing better as well. The question is, who have they played? Like UCF, Kentucky, Tennessee, but those are not cupcakes. I mean, there's offenses that are struggling, but their defense is trending up. And Kirby just doesn't cover these big numbers. There's more than a 2-touchdown favorite. He's 42% against the spread, 0-3 this year. Although to be fair, he's 14-8 against the spread on the road or on neutral fields, and just 11-26 at home against the number. And he is 11-5 against the spread when he's between 2 and 3 touchdown favorite, including, he was 14.5 point favorite last year against Florida and did cover. So really it's the bigger numbers. He's 9-21 against the spread as a favorite above 24 points. But Napier, your boy, very good as an underdog, 23-11 against the spread, 10-3 as a double-digit dog. He's going to go for the back door. if it's there. But I think this Florida team is really trending up from what I've seen, and after digging into it,
Yep.
can call. And just this Georgia team's been so inconsistent all year. The way to beat this Florida defense is to run on them. It's not like Georgia's been great running the ball. Carson Beck is like,
He was
just good
horrible.
for.
He was horrible
He's
against
just
Texas.
he's just good for a turnover or two now
Right.
every week. So I think I like Florida over 2 touchdowns. Push me over the edge.
Well, it sounds like you're already there, but I'll try to help you out. So it's tough to see DJ Lagway making any kind of progress with the passing offense against Georgia, because what's been instilled in our brain and our eye test is Georgia out physically in Texas the last time we saw them, and then Kirby Smart cutting a promo, a WWE type promo saying, "We came to eat," right? But my question is, Kirby, why does your team not respond like this every single week? And are they going to be able to respond to it a second consecutive time from a physicality standpoint? Because Florida's going to show up and give their best effort here. So from an offensive standpoint for the Gators, it's tough to see Lagway getting anything deep on them. And freshman Jaden Baugh had 5 TDs last week, 106 rushing yards. So he is there for Montrell Johnson, Jr., who might not play in this game. He's listed as questionable. I think the thing with Baugh being a freshman, he only forced 2 missed tackles and 22 rushing attempts. So I don't think the elusiveness is there. But 5 TDs is something you want to look at and say, there's at least a red zone option here if Florida is able to get downfield. It's the other side of the ball where the news really kind of came out this week about what's going on with Florida. Apparently 3 weeks ago, a group of players on the defense, starters and reserves, went to Austin Armstrong and our favorite head coach of the Florida Gators and asked to simplify concepts, get communication going between the defensive line and the secondary. They wanted all of the bells and whistles inside the playbook to be thrown out, let them go back to a base and see if they can cook. Well, the answer is they did. They trimmed the Kentucky rushing game. Vandegrift had 12 of 32 passing, a couple of INTs. What did Tennessee do with Nico? 169 yards of passing and no passing touchdowns against Tennessee. They figured something out. A lot of other defenses have figured that out on Tennessee, but Florida figured it out too. And Georgia has been excellent in 113 snaps this season. Sorry, let me say that again. The Gators have been excellent in 113 snaps this season against inside zone. That is the primary run concept used by Georgia here. And the Gators have just eaten it up all year, a lower than mid FBS success rate against that. Plus, you look into the numbers, the Gators are 3rd nationally in limiting explosives in early downs. And that is where Georgia really likes to take their shots, 1st and 2nd down in good down and distance situations, standard downs. They like to take a shot, and the Gators are 3rd in limiting explosives that early. I think Beck's going to be in passing downs frequently. I think he's going to have pressure in his face. And you're right. I mean, he failed to make a big time throw against Florida in this spot against this defense last year. And one factor of that is the fact that Florida plays a pretty heavy amount of cover 1. Carson Beck in his career against cover 1, 42% success rate, a negative EPA. Beck has just not been good against that coverage look, and I'm wondering if that's starting to get spread out. So I played Florida today. I would play it down to 14, a flat 14. I also played first half under 27.5. If you look at these two teams scoring, they're both outside the top 80 in first quarter scoring. The original script that is written for these two offenses has just not panned out this year. Adjustments of what's created points later on. So I do like a first half under, but I like Florida to cover all the numbers down to 14.
All right, I'm in. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
I need 14.5 though, which I just was able to get 15.
Yeah, there's 15 there.
I just got a 15.5. All right, Indiana at Michigan State, the wagon that is Signetti. Indiana is out to, I assume they took money.
You're the wagon. You've been the wagon with Michigan State, so I've really been wanting to hear this one from you. Because I'm the one that won't get off Indiana, right? Even when they're getting all the money and the tickets, and it's like, I don't know if I can fade Signetti. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to play Michigan State if Rourke was out and I was getting 7 or better.
Right.
It looks like Rourke is going to play. The question is, will the injury hamper his ability to throw, hand it off? That's the big unknown here.
Because that's where you attack Michigan State is through the air.
Through the air, yeah. So if he's fully healthy, I wouldn't want any part of Michigan State with Rourke in there because he's been unbelievable. Can't really run on Michigan State. Like you could run on Washington, which is what they did last week.
Right.
But you can't run on Michigan State, really. You got to attack them through the air. I don't trust Jackson. And this is like Indiana's first real road test. I wouldn't trust Jackson to do that here, but just I don't know how healthy Rourke is going to be. The other really interesting thing here is Michigan State. Indiana's been so good in the first quarter. You've talked about this a lot, but
Mhm.
so is Michigan State because Smith's script is so good. Who
Yep.
wins that battle? Um, so I don't know. I might put Sparty in a round robin just because of the added uncertainty with Rourke, right? So if he's not healthy and it leads to like a couple turnovers, um, that's like intriguing from an underdog money line perspective. But I'd probably have to pass right now. Maybe if it gets to 10, I'll look at
Yeah,
Michigan State. But
you got to wait for the Rourke announcement to come because that affects so many things about what Indiana can do, especially throwing, which is where you attack Michigan State. So seeing that number get up to 8, I would suspect the practice is going pretty well this week, but I would still wait for the confirmation. And if the number gets a little bit too high, I have been holding back on Auburn bets to use as a money line parlay with another 7-point favorite. And if Curtis Rourke is playing, this would probably be the one that I would pair it up with. Now, the thing that I think Michigan State's in trouble is the Signetti Havoc, right? They're 18th in the country, and Michigan State is outside the top 100 in Havoc allowed. And we've talked about Aiden Childs, some of the problems that he has. He has just been terrorized by opposing pass rushes
he
this
has,
year.
I think he has the most turnover worthy plays in the country.
And it's, I mean, 86 pressures he's seen this season, right? I mean, it's tough. You don't hold it against him. It's maybe a quarterback that we look to back pretty hard next year once you get a better offensive line. But I mean, I'm not going to get in front of this Indiana team, unless Rourke is out. They also, even if Rourke is not in there, there's still a high level of rush explosives from Michigan State that could give Indiana trouble. So that is the avenue for Michigan State. But if Rourke is in there, it's tough to justify, um, taking Michigan State. So it really all depends on Indiana and their quarterback status.
Pitt at SMU, what I'm calling the fraud bowl. SMU, two teams that are still undefeated in the ACC. Winner of this game will still be in the conversation for an ACC title. SMU 7.5-point favorite here. Total sitting at 57.5. There's questions at quarterback for both teams. I would assume Jennings goes, and I would assume Holstein goes. But there's a little bit of uncertainty there. I don't think either team's gonna have much success running the ball. Which team can hit the pass explosives? For what it's worth, Lashley's offense did that often in both their matchups against Narduzzi and that defense. That's what you have to do. You have to hit the explosives. Pitt's going to be aggressive. They're going to have a lot of guys in the box. They're going to have guys on islands on the outside. But how much does the loss of RJ Maryland hurt in that department? So,
Big.
yeah, this game, I think I would lean SMU.
Yeah.
I think you have a stronger take here. What do you say?
I do like SMU a lot in this game. I think you get another week of practice without RJ Maryland in your offense, and you can figure out who it is that your playmakers are going to be because we dropped his name on the podcast last week. Matthew Hibner, the tight end that's a backup for RJ Maryland, I think had 7 targets on the season. Well, he had 6 last week. So he nearly doubled his entire season of targets in one game. And so what you're going to look for is that offense. If they stay on the ground with inside zone for Jennings and Brashard Smith, they should absolutely dominate here against Pitt, who has shown struggles against those kinds of run concepts. I think the bigger problem is the Pitt offense. I know Eli Holstein was listed as that he was going to play. I think I saw something come across on an availability report. I don't care if it's him or Yarnell. I don't think there's that big of a drop between them because everybody thinks Eli Holstein has been great, but they don't recognize the fact that he has 9 big time throws to 14 turnover worthy plays.
He's been so lucky.
Yeah, very much. And both Holstein and Yarnell, they take major dips in adjusted completion rate when they have dropbacks with pressure. Pitt is outside the top 70 in pass blocking. They're outside the top 70 in havoc allowed. They allow defensive lines to get into their quarterback's face, and that is bad news against defensive coordinator Randy Bates, 4-3 of SMU. Top 15 in havoc. But more importantly, the player to watch on your TV is Elijah Roberts. The defensive end is graded as the highest individual player in all of PFF in pass rush productivity of not just any interior linebacker, of any defensive player. Who's he going to go up against on the Pitt offensive line? Ryan Baer, that offensive tackle, worst pass blocking grade of all the starters on the line. and you're going to be facing what PFF calls is the best pass rusher in all of college football. Not sure if Kevin Jennings is healthy. Not sure if that SMU offense is going to get the groove going, but I can tell you this, that SMU defensive line is going to eat here. So I like SMU.
Yeah, I mean, SMU did get banged out. They had a couple other bumps and bruises last week, but yeah, I mean, Holstein hasn't been great throwing it deep either. And I think that's how you have to beat this SMU team. And then just like the simple handicap of this is, you know, SMU survived with a -6 turnover margin last week. Pitt, you know, had what, a +5 turnover margin, 3 pick sixes.
Kyle McCord had 5 interceptions, and to top that off, Stuck, SMU just wasn't -6. They had 3 interceptions and 3 fumbles lost. They actually had 6 fumbles. They got 3 of them back. They could have had 9 turnovers last week against Duke. That's how bad it was.
That Manny Diaz havoc. Yeah, and the Pitt offense is trending down if you look at their numbers over the past couple of weeks. And I mean, I've said it all year. This team was extremely, extremely fortunate early in the year. I mean, the comeback against West Virginia, the comeback, they should have lost to Cincy. So it's going to run out soon. Louisville at Clemson. This is a game that I dug into last night, and I came away. I didn't think I was going to play Louisville, and I'm playing Louisville.
Because they're not dead. We thought they were dead.
Yeah, here's the thing. So it's a bad situational spot on the surface, which is why I thought I wasn't going to play Louisville. They're, you know, Clemson's off of a bye. Louisville's playing their 7th straight game. The previous 6 were all competitive. The last 5 all by 1 possession, and the one against Georgia Tech was closer than the final score. But what have we seen all year? It's these teams that look dominant, who have played nobody for long stretches, then play somebody, and they don't look good. I'm as high as anybody on Clemson coming into the year. Have them win the ACC, have them to go to the College Football Playoff. But there's a chance they're not as good as they've shown over the past 6 weeks. They've played nobody since Georgia. Here's who, they've played, their average power rating of the teams they faced on my power ratings, 73. They've played 0 teams I have in the top 60. And they've also had a +10 turnover margin in those games. Do you know who has played good teams? Louisville. Over their past 6 games, the average power rating of their opponents, 32nd. They've played 3 top 20 teams. They've also played they also played Miami. They had a bogus call. Probably should have won that game. 1 possession loss. At Notre Dame, easily could have won that game. 1 possession loss. SMU, another top 20 team, 1 possession loss. Pretty even game statistically. They play up and down to all their opponents. Every single one of their games is close. They are also more than capable with Chuck and this offense of getting in the back door if needed. But I think this might be like a shock to the system of Clemson. They played nobody for 6 weeks. I mean, like literally nobody. You look at their schedule. I mean, they've played NC State, App State, who's so down. NC State is so down. Virginia, we just saw get boat raced by UNC. Wake Forest. I mean, like nobody. So, yeah, and there's a lot of the early down data that I was digging into suggests some positive regression for the Louisville offense. They're also going to get some turnovers and sacks. Like they're getting a ton of pressure, but not sacks. They're going to eventually get some turnovers. And there's probably negative regression coming from the Clemson D if you look at the early down data. And the underlying metrics aren't elite for this Clemson team. And they, despite like a pretty easy stretch of 6 games. So, yeah, and then to put it over the top for me, it's Braum is a dog. He has been unbelievable. As a 6 or more point underdog, he's 18-9 against the spread, 67%, covering by over 9 points per game. He's won 12 of those 27 games outright with an average spread of nearly 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, this is kind of a gut feel because I don't show a ton of value in this number. But Louisville just hasn't played. I mean, Clemson just hasn't played anybody. This could be a bit of a shock to the system. Some worrying underlying defensive metrics. Klubnik's been unbelievable, but again, hasn't played anyone. Should be under pressure here. And Braum is a dog. I think Louisville makes this another close game.
Yeah, I think the problem for me has been I projected 11 with a total of 62, and that's exactly where the market is sat all week. So I've kind of
Yeah,
been
I'm at like 10. Like I don't show a ton of value. This is like gut. Also,
right.
like, hey, I might just be too high on Clemson because the one real team they played, they got blown out by. And we've at least seen Louisville play 3 top 20 teams to 1 possession.
There are some things in Clemson's defensive numbers that really shocked me. Like I had to go into the database to make sure I didn't screw a column up, right? I mean, the Louisville offense, I'll start here. The Louisville offense is fantastic in creating methodical drives. They are 4th in quality drives, which means they get into scoring position often with their offensive possessions. So that means they're going to create scoring opportunities, probably with the rush. But if I'm reading these Clemson numbers correctly, you're 106th in defensive line yards. You're 96th in defensive rushing success rate. Your trench is not stopping the run. Your linebackers are not stopping the run. And how are you 109th in defensive finishing drives with this schedule of offenses that you face so far? I mean, throw Georgia out of there. That number probably gets worse. 109th in defensive finishing drives and 106th in defensive line yards. That can be taken advantage of. That really gives me some pause about some Clemson futures here about thinking about them heading up to potentially play Miami or maybe SMU in the ACC championship game.
Agreed.
Clemson's defense has really fallen off here. I'm going to back you on Louisville. I'm going to make a decision here on the over because both of these defenses outside the top 100 in defensive finishing drives to get into scoring position. Clemson is 5th. Louisville is 4th offensively. Both these teams should be beyond the 40 all day. And both of these teams have advantages over the opposing defenses in scoring. So I'll review the over, but I'm going to join you here on Louisville.
Putting it on the board. Last, I just wanted to mention TCU Baylor. I think this is actually a good matchup for TCU. They can't run the ball, but you can't run on Baylor. You attack them through the air. That's what TCU does. And TCU can't stop the run, but Baylor can't run it. I think TCU is potential good round robin piece there.
Yeah, I didn't have.
Yeah.
I was going to say I didn't have anything other than I think it should have been a pick. So I think the value does lie in TCU here. And plus, this is a TCU team that blew out Dave Aranda last year, 42-17. I know it's different players and it's a year ago, but with similar coaching staffs, TCU has the upper hand here.
All right, let's get to some quarterback news. By the way, make sure you check out the Group of 5 guys. Their episode's out now. Mike and Mike always do a great job every week with the Group of 5 rundown. Appreciate some of the reviews. Make sure you know the drill. Subscribe, leave a review. Go to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button as well. But a couple of reviews recently, shouting out those guys, which was well deserved. But let's get to some quarterback news. I got some 33 teams here, excluding teams we already mentioned with quarterback uncertainty. Kentucky, is it Wimsatt or Vandergriff? I don't know. Cats are beat up on defense, and they might have quit. You like Tennessee, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I just can't trust Nico to lay a big number, but I can't play Kentucky. Purdue will. I'll talk about that game later. So it's going to be Brown and Card for what it's worth. Stanford, Brown started but was replaced by Ashton Daniels for what it's worth. Florida State, I assume they're rotating clowns again. Virginia, Calandria replaced by Musket. Still a decision to be made there. Arizona State.
Hey, that's a big one there. Calandria only throws 50-yard passes. So keep your eyes on the total on Virginia games.
Arizona State, Levitt is back. Scadaboo's been saying he's had this game circled because they should have beat Oklahoma State last week. He should have a huge day. Oak State, 126 EPA per rush allowed. Texas Tech, Morton expected to go against Iowa State, but he's dealing with a shoulder injury. Banged up again. UCF, Brown was replaced by Risk last weekend. Keep an eye on the UCF quarterback situation. Utah, Wilson was replaced by Brandon Rose, getting equal reps in practice. Worth monitoring going forward. I think West Virginia probably has a quarterback battle on their hands. Neil Brown, who just replaced his defensive coordinator, didn't say who he will go with once Green is healthy going forward. Oregon State, I think McCoy might have lost his job. He was replaced last game. Rice, I think EJ Warner should be back. I'll talk about that game in a minute. Tulsa, Cooper Lagasse replaced Francis in that crazy comeback. Maybe the job is his now. Zeno's still out for UAB. We'll talk USF, Friday Night Lights. Air Force, talk about that game in a minute. Nevada, Lewis is back. Pretty good matchup for Colorado State, though, because they're a run-first offense now.
Yeah.
You got to run on Nevada, and they can defend the run. San Diego State, O'Neal questionable, left last game but returned, dealing with an injury. We'll talk about that game, Friday Night Lights. Wyoming, Caden Anderson replaced Swoboda. He will start this week. Coastal Carolina, when is that game? Is that game? That's Saturday. Kim replaced Vasco early. Who knows? Still up in the air. Georgia Southern, French still the starter, even though he was replaced by Dexter Williams last game. Georgia State,
Friday night.
We'll talk about that game in a bit. ULM looks like that's Armenta's job now. Iowa, McNamara out, Sullivan starting. You can run on Wisconsin. That's good news, and I think they upgraded at quarterback. Marshall looks like it's Braxton's job going forward. Troy, Caldwell's. Texas State, McLeod got hurt, worth noting earlier this week. Akron, Finley is hopeful. He got hurt, carried off the end of last game. Central Michigan down to Jefferson. Not sure when Bird will be back. Miami O, Gabbert got hurt, returned, but was still banged up. Worth monitoring. Northern Illinois, Hampton didn't start, but took most of the reps, coming back from injury. UTEP, McConnell out, Locklear questionable. Is it JP Pickles time? We'll find
Pickles
out.
Cat. The Pickles Cat package.
You like Minor Nation?
I like Minor Nation. I took him at 2.5. I'd still take him at 3.
All right, let's move on. UTEP's defense playing better, too, recently.
Hey, Scotty Waldron. I knew he would get them fired up at the second half of the season.
It's time for some trash. All right, trash. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I know how this is going to go. This is going to be good.
Trash, 8-4 in the year. You're 1-0 on your trash. We'll start with Rice. I'm back on my Rice bullshit against Navy. I make this line 9. Navy, they don't usually succumb to these situational spots because service academies don't, but you got to think they got to maybe a little flat going down to an empty Rice Stadium after that Notre Dame game that ended their college football playoff hopes. And from a quarterback perspective, I think a lot of uncertainty in this game. So I don't love this as much as the other two that I'll get to. But you got to remember, Horvath hurt his thumb last week. What did that lead to? Lots of turnovers. And that could be an issue again this week. He missed time last year with a thumb injury. Rice has already seen a triple option. And Navy's not a pure triple option anymore, but that'll help earlier this year. And Rice is just playing much better after the bye. They fired their head coach. We saw both underdogs last week that fired their head coach cover. I think they'll rally here. I like betting 2 and 6 teams that have shown improvement of late because this is like their last gasp to see if they can get to the postseason. So, yeah, I think this number is just too high. Navy still has regression coming its way. I mean, turnover department. And Rice has been so unlucky. I mean, you look. Let me pull up Rice's numbers. So Rice is -8 turnover margin. They've only scored on 64% of their red zone trips. Only Houston has the worst percentage. They've only scored 11 touchdowns on 25 trips inside the 20. Meanwhile, Navy still +6 turnover margin after last week. Top 10 nationally in red zone offense, red zone defense. They've been getting lucky. And I think Horvath's thumb injury is the thing. Warner was playing much better before last week. You can throw last week's game for Rice out. They were playing a true freshman. But, Warner, the 2 games prior to that, he threw for over 600 yards. They outplayed Tulane in a game they should have won. They were -5 in turnover margin. I think this is too many points here. Give me Rice, who, oddly enough, you wouldn't guess this. Since 2005, only Kansas State has been a more profitable team at home in conference play. Rice is 44-28-4 against the spread at home, 61.1%. I like Rice down to 10.5.
Yeah, I like Rice here. I think they can win the game. They're going to be in my round robins. The response.
Put it on the agree. Am I putting it on the agree?
Oh, yeah. The response to Pete Alomar taking over, the interim coach, he was the special teams coordinator. He was the special teams coordinator for Bloomgren at Stanford. There's a lot of 5th, 6th, I think a couple 7th-year seniors on this Rice squad that are going to play their asses off for Pete Alomar. There's also a bit of conversation going on about changing things offensively, maybe rolling it back to the Bloomgren offense that was there when he first showed up, what he learned at Stanford
Yeah.
under David
I think
Shaw.
they're going to run it more. And
Right.
Navy, despite its strength of schedule, is 132nd. They're 122nd in rush success rate. So I think
Right.
they get the run game going a little more, which will help out Warner. And this Navy secondary is attackable too.
I think the one thing that I get pause on is like, okay, Rice has seen the triple, but they were destroyed by Army. I'm not sure if we can improve from that performance, but at least they've seen offenses trying to implement the triple, whether it's in space or the spread or veer or whatever. So I like Rice for a
And they
number.
look good against Tulane's rush attacks. Like that was promising.
And that Rice team without EJ Warner had no business backdoor covering last week. So they're still fighting.
All right. Next, Air Force. Originally thought I was gonna. I have to play this. A service academy catching over 3 touchdowns against another service academy. I mean, I think that's only happened one other time. They think it was 2015, that dominant Navy team against the awful Army team. Guess what? The Navy was ranked. Army lost by 4. Since 2005, service academies as underdogs of more than 3 touchdowns. 19-5-1 against the spread. 79.2%. Covering by over a touchdown per game. Plus low total here. FBS underdogs of more than 3 touchdowns with a total of less than 45. 61%. Covering by about 4 points per game. And Army's, like, here's the thing. Look no further than last year. Last year, I mean, it's kind of eerie. This same exact situation was reversed. Air Force was 8-0 and ranked. Army was horrendous. They were, I think, 2-5. They just lost to UMass at home. They were catching 18. I was on this podcast saying how we have to take Army, no matter how disgusting it looks. Air Force was getting so lucky with turnovers. They didn't play anybody. Guess what happened? Air Force turned it over 6 times. They got blown out at home. What did they lose by 20-something?
Mm-hmm.
Same scenario now. You have Army trolling Air Force. Air Force looks awful. They have 1 win on the season. Army, undefeated, ranked, haven't played anybody. Been getting so lucky with turnovers. I mean, but you look, their strength of schedule, including FCS teams, 145th. They played Lehigh, FAU, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, UAB, and ECU. Those teams have a combined 9-33 record. And one of those 9 was a game when they played each other, Tulsa and Temple. There's red zone efficiency, turnovers, similar to what we saw last week with Navy, and last year with Air Force. There's regression coming. Opponents will eventually convert a 4th down against Army. They've stopped 14 of 21. They eventually will score in the red zone. Army's held opponents to a 53% scoring rate in the red zone. Scoring rate, not touchdown. That's number 1 in the nation by a wide margin. And they played nobody. Now, granted, Air Force is bad. They're in the group of some of those teams that I listed. But they know how to defend a triple option. They see it every day in practice. And they're probably making a quarterback change here. And they're probably going with Hayes and Johnson under center. They were hurt last game. They actually showed a little bit more juice. They're the more mobile guys. And their original starter is so bad. Hayes confirmed in. Johnson looks like he's a go-to. Their original starter, Boucher, to the bench. He's not even taking any reps. I think that helps their offense. And this Army defense, they've played nobody. 145th strength of schedule. They're 92nd in success rate against the run. Air Force will be able to sustain some drives here. Kill the clock. They know how to defend the triple option. I have to take this. I know, but I wouldn't be shocked if Air Force won. Like, it just takes a couple fumbles, a couple red zone stops. Hey, yeah, over 3 touchdowns in a service academy game.
Yeah.
I don't care if they lose by 50. I'll take this till the day I die.
I hate Air Force. I hate this play. It's gross. I don't want my name attached to it, but it's over 3 touchdowns. It's a service academy game. And when's the last time a team in this series won by by more than 21 points? 2009. It hasn't happened in West Point since 2006. There's just mutual respect, I think, that keeps that extra touchdown from going up on the board. So I'm with you, and I hate every bit of it.
So not on the agree
It's
tab.
so
You're not
bad.
willing to put it on the agree tab.
Uh, at 21 and a half, we have to take it. Right.
Okay.
I mean, we have to, it's our rules. It's our podcast. This is what we live on. This is what we do.
Thank
And
you.
I just have to be honest. Like, I don't think these coaches will ever put an extra touchdown on the board against each other. That's in our favor too. If there's a 28-point lead.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this game was like, well, it takes a couple fumbles. Like that last year, Air Force got blown out. They were undefeated. I mean,
Yeah.
familiarity factor.
23 to 3.
Huge.
23 to 3.
I'm saying, I'm saying, 20-13.
You're calling 2013.
Yep. All right, last one, Purdue.
Yeah.
This line flipped, but I still like it. Northwestern stinks. Their offense is in the dump. I mean, Lausch, he provided a spark, but it's over with. I mean, those last two games, he's 19 of 43 for 144 yards and 2 picks. And I think in this situationally, Northwestern's 5th straight game, 2nd straight on the road. Purdue has had 15 days off.
Yeah.
They played on Friday night before the bye week. Their offense starting to trend up. Walters took over play calling. They fired Graham Harrell. What did they do differently? Quarterback run game. That's opened up the rushing attack for Love and Maccabee. And I think that's a good thing against this bend, but don't break Northwestern defense. They don't give up explosives. Purdue doesn't have explosives in the passing game. Doesn't really matter. Walters will fix some of the issues on the defense, I think, during the bye. Now, it's still going to be a bad defense, but I don't think Northwestern's the offense to fully capitalize. And you're going to get 2 quarterbacks here. You're going to get Brown and Card. Makes it harder for Northwestern to prepare for. I think both can use their legs. Both can bring different things to the table. And these two teams, these two offenses are heading in different directions. We've seen some life lately from the Purdue offense. And you could just go back to that Illinois game they should have won. They put up close to 50. They even moved the ball against Oregon. And I think this is their first and last chance, by the way, at a Big Ten opportunity at a Big Ten win. After this game, they got Ohio State, Michigan State, Indiana, and Penn State. 3 of those are on the road. Only Penn State's at home. This is the first time Northwestern's laying. Well, I guess they're a dog now. I still like it. Give me Purdue.
Yeah. Put us down for Purdue on the money line. I know there's some minus 115s out there. There are 2 teams at home this week that are playing off of a bye, facing teams on multiple road travel. Iowa State and Purdue. I like them both at home. So put it down on the board.
All right, that's your trash. Air Force, Rice, and Purdue. Let's go nowhere fast.
Yeah.
We'll get ahead of ourselves on Friday Night Lights. We won't cover this game on Friday Night Lights. San Diego State, Boise State, 23.5-point favorite here. What worries me here is San Diego State can't stop the run. Their pass defense numbers look good, but they also haven't faced any pass offense with a pulse. It's not the best spot for Boise. Over under here, or what do you say?
Leaning to the over, but the number is trickling closer to 55 at some spots. There is no answer for Genty. I wouldn't blame anyone for taking Genty touchdown props here. San Diego State lives on explosive plays. Boise is outside the top 50 defensive rush and pass EPA. I like points here, but I'm going to wait for this market to trim down a little bit.
All right, Collin talking Arkansas football. Arkansas, this line is starting to creep out.
Yeah. I don't like
They'll
Arkansas.
host Ole Miss. I was thinking about taking the points here. There's questions in the backfield injury-wise for Arkansas, which is a bit concerning. But you can't really run on Ole Miss anyway. It just has to be Green creating and hitting some plays downfield.
Right.
Do I trust this Ole Miss? Like, here's the thing. Arkansas couldn't get to the Nussmeier because of LSU's really good offensive line. Ole Miss, their offensive line is not great, and they're dealing with some injuries. Can Arkansas get home, drop everyone into coverage? Trey Harris might not play. And, I mean, Ole Miss, they just go under every week. I have a slight lean to Arkansas, and this Ole Miss team, it just doesn't do it for me. But you have a better, I don't love it.
Yeah.
You have a better read on Arkansas than me. You actually like the favorite here.
Yeah, Arkansas is in big trouble without Brayan Russell, who blew out his hamstring last week, and Jaquindon Jackson has not practiced this week. So there is no R in the RPO for Taylon Green, which means the only offense we're going to be able to supply is him bootlegging or rolling out of the pocket and trying to hit somebody downfield. And it's just not going to work against an Ole Miss team that is elite on the defensive line and elite in the secondary so far. I just don't see a path without running backs to establish zone read and get Arkansas points on the board. You go to the other side of the ball. The reason Ole Miss didn't cover Oklahoma is because of Trey Harris, not because of the havoc. I believe there were 10 tackles for loss. I'm sorry, there were 10 sacks and 15 tackles for loss against OU last week. The Razorbacks have allowed 114 pressures this season.
Yeah, I'm worried about the Arkansas offensive line.
Yeah, so no, I'm on Ole Miss this week. I know there's this history of the Rebels coming in and getting shook up in Fayetteville, but I don't see it this week.
All right, before we get out of here, let's go 3 and out. All right, we're not recording this live anymore, so we wanted to took some feedback from you guys, and I actually agree with it because we were saving some of the games we felt strongest about till the end. So we wanted to talk about them more in the beginning, and then we can just recap and hit Friday Night Lights in the end. So first down, let's go Friday Night Lights. Already talked about San Diego State, Boise State, South Florida at FAU. I mean, this is an awful Friday slate. I don't think Byron Brown's going to play.
Right.
USF, their run D's been very good. I'm not sure FAU can exploit their pass D, but I don't trust South Florida's offense without Brown. FAU's D has been quietly pretty good, especially against the pass. I think you would need like Brown in there and running.
Yep.
Which they don't have. This should be a run-heavy game, but it's fast. It's going to be fast-paced, so I don't know. I'd lean a bit to the under, but I'm not betting this game.
I took Florida Atlantic +3. I like Cam Fancher at quarterback doing things on the ground, not throwing. What happened against UTSA is not going to happen here because South Florida has bottom 20 ranks in every pass defensive category. I expect Fancher to be better throwing the ball. And, look, South Florida is 185th of FBS and FCS teams in creating a contested catch. I just don't see Fancher's problems in the air being an issue here. Plus, CJ Campbell, 4 yards after first contact, combined to run these zone reads with Fancher. Both of them combined for 28 gains over 10 yards. I like the power, explosive rushing attack of Florida Atlantic here.
Georgia State at UConn. Georgia State's 7.5. I think you bet UConn. You want to go head-to-head at 7.5?
No, because I took UConn -5.5 on opener, and I want Georgia State at 8. I'm probably seeing the same things you are. Georgia State can show up against the UConn rushing attack. They can actually defend it. So, if the offensive line is just not doing their job for UConn whatsoever, it's been all on the backs to create highlight yards.
Yeah, I like Georgia State here. Anything over a touchdown, I'll be on that. It's a small bet. It looks like Gibson probably is the new quarterback there over there. But I don't trust this UConn team laying over
at 8. For everybody on the app at 8. I'm coming back over the top of the UConn -5.5.
All right, let's summarize some of our favorite bets. Let's go to second down. Our favorite overdog. That's our favorite. I'll kick these off. Already talked about it. Auburn. I think this number is too short, and there's some regression coming for this Vandy team. Auburn will be ready. Has had this game circled. It's a Ponzi week. War Eagle.
Well, it's also a row the boat week. I'm going to go with Minnesota as my favorite overdog here, a number that's steaming for a reason. Specifically, Max Brosmer has been elite throwing the ball lately, six passing touchdowns. He hasn't had a mistake in the last 3 games. His average depth of target got over 10 yards against Maryland last week. That is really big for Brosmer, who's been a dink and dunk type of quarterback. Plus, Illinois, they're missing one of their best targets on the outside, and Pat Bryant with a concussion, not expected to play. A lot of pressure coming to Luke Altmaier's way. I like Minnesota.
Let's move on to our underdog moneyline parlay. Give me Washington. We haven't talked about this game. I think you agree on Washington.
I love it. Yeah, I love Washington this week.
This is a good matchup for Washington. What does USC do? They pass heavy. What is Washington elite at doing? Defending the pass.
Number 1 at it.
What do you have to do? Move the ball against USC. This defense that's beat up, efficiently pass the ball. They do a good job of taking away explosives. That's what Washington can do. USC's also not getting pressure. Washington is they haven't done a lot of the little things. The special teams is bad, the costly turnovers, but they've been unlucky. Some of that is going to regress. USC's been a disaster on the road. I don't see why that changes. They've been favored on the road 3 times in league play. They've lost all 3 games outright. I like this Washington team. Give me the Huskies at home, which, I mean, you look at the underlying metrics, they're all great. It's just that they've been so unlucky, but it's not like USC's been buttoned up in those things. Like they lost on a blocked field goal against Maryland. They've blown 14-point leads in back-to-back weeks. Like they're not that buttoned up either. So I like Washington at home.
Yeah.
You agree there?
I do agree completely, and I'm going to take Penn State as my underlying money line dog to put in here with you. I believe in Andy Kotelnicki. I believe in Bo Prabula. It was mentioned I didn't say this before when we handicapped everything that we said about the Ohio State offensive line. How is Will Howard going to deal with pressure? I think Penn State has a lot of advantages because Kotelnicki is going to get into his Kansas offensive playbook and put some plays down that he hasn't been able to use with Drew Aller. But more importantly, James Franklin said in his presser earlier this week, we haven't done this before, and I told Andy it's changing this week. We are going to have a separate playbook for our backup quarterback, and he's going to come in and get sprinkled in every quarter. To me, that's big. There is faith in Prabula, and Kotelnicki has a special offensive playbook for him. Give me Penn State, the Nittany Lions.
All right. And just summarize, favorite bet. Let's go for it on 4th down. Air Force. Service Academy over 3 touchdowns against another Service Academy.
Yeah, SMU potentially 9 turnovers last week. That was just 6 going up against a Pitt team that was +5, getting 5 interceptions from Kyle McCord. It's based on that and the fact that SMU lost their best target in the passing game, and now they've had a week to practice to try to get over that hump. I think havoc is what dominates here for the Ponies.
All right. Before we get out of here, let's review the board. 10 agree.
Wow.
Michigan, +14.5. South Carolina, +3.5. Minnesota, -3. Auburn, -7. Florida, +15.5. Louisville, +10.5. Rice, +11. Air Force, +21.5. Purdue, moneyline. Washington, +3. And guess what? I lead 2-1 in head-to-head. Give me Sammy, baby.
We're head-to-head, definitely.
I'm going to put Sammy in there, +7.5.
All right.
I'm not sure if I'll bet it yet, but just
might not be hurt if they cover, but personally.
Trash, Air Force, Rice, Purdue.
Yeah. Also
in the agree tab. Wait, I didn't even look at. Do you have any trash you wanted to add?
Right. Well, Rice. We got to Rice. Right. Okay. The coaching change was big.
The Collin Rice special.
Yeah.
All right. That will do it for us. Thanks, Collin, for joining me as always. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. You know the drill. Live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday on our BBOC YouTube channel and in the app. Good luck on all of your wagers this weekend. Enjoy the action. 959 Bad Beat also. Voicemails, recap episode Monday morning. Thanks again for tuning in. Catch y'all this weekend. Cheers.
Peace out.